Hey there, in this video we're going to run through installing Anaconda and Python on our computer. So what I have here is a virtual machine running a clean install of Windows 10. The steps I show you will be basically identical if you're running Windows or Mac OS or Linux. The only difference is how do you open up your terminal. We're going to have to open up a terminal to do this installation. So on Windows, we could just type in our search box here and type in command, and we'll see the good old command prompt. As far as I know, PowerShell will work just the same for us. If you are on Linux, you probably already know how to open your terminal. You'll find it in the equivalent of the start menu, and on Mac OS, similarly, you can use Finder to search for terminal. Okay, we're not going to need this just yet, but we want this handy for our installation. So the first thing we need to do is download some files. I've prepared a couple files ahead of time to make things easier on us. So I've already opened this up here. There's a link for you in the written instructions. And this is going to download a text file that describes what packages we need to install. So the way this works is at the top is the name of the environment we're going to be creating with Anaconda. So Anaconda is a distribution of Python packages, and you can sort them into different environments. And that way, if you need certain packages, you can keep them constrained to one environment and they won't affect your other environments, because some Python packages will conflict with each other. So I've just picked a name here. For us, we don't really need to worry too much about channels. That's just where it goes to get the packages. And then the dependencies are the Python packages we're going to be using in this course. So NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib are the big three that you'd use pretty much in any kind of scientific Python. NumPy has structures called arrays, which are sequences of numbers that we can work on basically simultaneously. SciPy has some facilities for doing integrations or Fourier transforms. We'll use many packages out of SciPy. Matplotlib is for plotting. And then the other big one that we'll be using here is JupyterLab, which will be the environment we'll be writing our programs in. FFmpeg is used for recording videos, and so we're going to use that to make some animations with Matplotlib, where our plots change as a function of time, and we save it into a file that we could then, say, put online. IPython is a backend that is a sort of souped up version of the regular Python interpreter that we need for some of this other stuff to work. Widgets let us make things like sliders and checkboxes, so we can make some simple GUIs. And Node.js it's a JavaScript thing, but we need that to install Widgets in JupyterLab. So we need it sort of as a dependency for some other stuff. This is just a text file, so you could copy and paste it. The name is important, though. It needs to be named environment.yaml, yet another markup language. I'm using Chrome here, so I could just right-click and choose Save As. Okay, and then that's going to give me my normal save prompt. Now, while we're here, we really should make a folder for this class, so I'm going to go over to my Documents folder, and I'm going to make a new folder for the class. So let's just call it, say, Phys1321. You can, of course, name it whatever you want. And that's where I'm going to save this file. Okay, there's another file I need to download. This one's got a lot more stuff in it. It's actually a Python program. And I use this to help me with some of the grading of what you'll be doing. You don't really need to dig through this file or see how it works nitty-gritty, although it's here for you to look at if you want. But for right now, we just need to save it. So again, I'm just going to right-click on the background here, choose Save As, and it should put it in the same folder as before. All right, so those are just two files you're going to need. Get that out of there. So now what we need to do is install Anaconda, and so this is the package manager for a bunch of Python packages. It is possible to install everything in that list I showed you one by one from its own website, but it's a lot easier just to use Anaconda. So depending on what operating system you're running on, you want to look for Python 3.7. That's the almost latest version of Python. Latest enough for our purposes, and we want 64-bit. Unless you have some kind of ancient computer that only runs 32-bit, you really do want the 64-bit. So since I'm on Windows, I'm going to click on the Windows installer here. Now for some of these others where you have things like Bash installer, if you're not really familiar with what that is, you can look at the installation instructions here and it'll step you through what you need to do. All right, so click on my installer. Okay, and so it has opened up, and we're going to mostly use default settings with the one exception of you might want to add Anaconda to your path. And if you're wondering, Anaconda and Miniconda are the same thing. Anaconda comes with a bunch of packages already in it, but it's a bigger download. We won't actually use most of those packages. Miniconda is just bare bones, and we can add what we need to it. So we'll just use the words Anaconda and Miniconda interchangeably. Anyway, as I was saying, this first option here, add Anaconda to my path environment. So what's going on here is if you're using a terminal, like the Windows command prompt or a terminal on, say, Mac OS, and you type in some command, your computer needs to know where to look to find that command. So look, later on, we're going to type some Python commands, like say Python, and how does your computer know where Python is? It's because it is added to the path. So in our case, we probably do want to add this to our path. The exception being if you've already installed Python, you're already using it for something else. In that case, you might not want to add this program to your path because it might break your other installation. But if you have never installed Python before, there's not really any reason not to add it to the path. So personally, I like to add it. I think it adds some conveniences. It'll work just fine. If you don't add it, it's just a little bit, you have to be a little bit more, go through a few more steps to launch Python is the only difference. Okay, so I'm going to add it here. And then we're just going to let it install. All right, looks like it is finished. And then we have some options to learn more, etc., etc. We don't need to do that. I mean, you might want to do that, but I'm not going to do that for this video. All right, so we should have it installed now. Now, since I added it to my path, I should be able to just type Python. Uh-oh, Microsoft. You know what happened? This command prompt was already opened, so it doesn't know about the new path variable. So if I close it and start a new one, type Python. There we go. So it knew where to find Python because we had it in our path. Now, exit will get us out of here. Oh, no, exit function will get us out of here. Suppose you didn't add it to your path. You're wondering, well, what do I do now? You'll come on to your start menu, and under Anaconda, you'll have this thing called an Anaconda Prompt. I don't think it really matters whether you use the PowerShell or the regular command prompt. I'll just use the regular one. And what this does is basically just your command prompt or your terminal with the path set ahead of time. So this is how you can get around adding it to your path variable. But like I said before, I think it's just more convenient to set the setting during the installation, and then I can open up any kind of command window. Now, so Python worked. I mean, we're pretty much guaranteed that this thing is installed correctly. Another thing we could do to test it out is we could type in Conda List. Conda is the command for the Anaconda package manager. So that, the thing we installed was called Miniconda. And so we can call Conda commands to say Conda install NumPy. Conda List just lists what we already have installed, and it's just a way to check that, yeah, Conda's there and we have stuff in there. And all the packages you see listed on the screen is just stuff we need in general for anything to work. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to type some commands. So if you, at this point, you don't have a terminal open, I need you to open one for me, whether it be an Anaconda prompt or your regular terminal. If you've added Python to the path, make sure Conda List works. Now we're going to run some commands to install the rest of the packages we need. So first thing we're going to do is update everything. So we're going to do a conda update conda. This updates the package manager itself just to make sure we're using the very latest version. And yeah, I know we just installed it, but the installation can run a little bit behind the actual newest version of things. So if you're about to do any installations, it's always a good idea to run conda update conda. Okay, and then it says it's going to install some stuff. We can just hit enter here. And so what this program does is it goes online and it finds the packages for us and it downloads them and sets them up and it makes sure everything's going to work together. So it's a lot nicer than doing it all manually. Okay, so this next step is optional, but what it's going to do is it's going to give us a graphic version of this program we're using here. So if you don't like using the command line, you can do everything from a GUI. So I'll show you how to do that. We're going to type in conda install and then what package we want to add. In this case, we want to use one called Anaconda Navigator. Okay, and it says it needs some stuff for this to work. Just hit enter. All right, looks like it is finished. And so now if we go to our start menu and look under Anaconda, we see we have something new. We have Anaconda Navigator. Okay, and we get this little splash screen. I don't feel like. And I've got a pretty low resolution here just for the video. Normally you can see your stuff a lot better, and it's got here some main applications you can install. You might even spot here that Jupyter Lab that we wanted. Go back. But we have another way to install that. We have our environments. Right now everything's being dumped in the one environment called base or root. In general, you don't want to be installing your packages here. Yes, you can, but if you break something, if you break your installation, you have to wipe out Anaconda completely and start over. So we're going to make a new environment for this class, and that way everything's neat and tidy and set aside. And if you want to experiment and install some other packages, you can make a new environment. If you want to use Python in your research, you can have a new environment for that. And everything's just self-contained. So anyway, we could do everything from here. Since we have the command line open, let's just do the rest of our management from there. So I'm going to close Anaconda Navigator for the moment. And what we need to do now is use that file we just downloaded to a Conda environment create. So this is us making our environment. -F is going to load everything we need from a file. And I'm going to use that environment.yaml file that I downloaded before. So environment YAML, and actually I'm probably not in the right directory, am I? This is my windows.me and users.my username, but that's not where I put the files. I actually ended up putting the files under documents and in is 1321. So actually what I really want is the path to that file. So let's fix that. Let me backspace. All right, delete works. So what I should be able to do is just drag it over here, and it'll type in the whole path for me. YAML.txt is change folder and search options. View. I want to always show extensions, so let's see. Hide extension. Don't want to hide extensions. Yep, what do you know? Okay. So we just need to rename these to be what they actually should be. Okay, and then in here, we need to get rid of that .text. Okay, so that should be good to go. Hit enter. All right, and it's done. Finally, that took a long time. I hope you paid for the fast Wi-Fi. That was sitting here for a while. All right. And anyway, you see this message here. To activate this environment, use Conda activate and then environment name, in our case, Viz 1321. So what's going on here is we have two environments now. So if I do Conda environment list, it should show me the two environments we have. There we go. So we have the base environment over here, and then the new environment we just created with all the packages we'll be using in this course. And the asterisk here is telling us that right now the base environment is what is selected by default. Anytime you open up a terminal or an Anaconda prompt, it's going to be the base environment that is selected. And so if you want to use a different environment, you need to tell Conda that's what you're doing. So we'll need to type in Conda activate Viz 1321. And that should switch us over to the new environment. And you can see right here, base has changed to Viz 1321. That's the one nice thing about using the Anaconda prompt, is it gives you this little reminder in the corner of what you're using. Regular command prompt is not going to do that. So if I just open up a regular command, we still have Conda here, but it's not telling me what environment I'm in. I can list though and see that by default we always start in the base environment. So keep that in mind. You don't want to start installing things without thinking about, hey, what environment am I in? Otherwise, you start polluting your base environment. Okay, so we want to activate the base environment, and we need to do a line of what kind of looks like magic, and that's going to add the widgets to JupyterLab. It's going to give us things like sliders and checkboxes. We only have to do this step once. So we're going to type in Jupyter. So that's the command for the Jupyter program, and we'll see that in another video. And the next part here is lab extension. We're going to install. Let me make sure my mouse isn't in the way there. And that's going to be at Jupyter widgets / JupyterLab - manager. And hopefully I typed that wrong. You can of course just copy and paste from the instructions. Let me just check. JupyterLab extension install Jupyter widgets JupyterLab manager. Okay. And that should do one last round of installation for us. All right, it is finished and we should have everything installed. So let's try launching Jupyter just to make sure it works. I'm going to close this window first just to show you how this typically will work. So let's say we want to go in. There's a couple ways to launch Jupyter. We can launch it from the Anaconda prompt like we were using, or we can launch it from Anaconda Navigator, which is ultimately probably a little bit easy. Let's start with the Anaconda prompt. So first of all, notice it dumped us in the base environment. That's always going to be where we default to, and I do wish there was a way to change it and say, hey, I'm going to be using Phys 1321 for a while, make that default, but unfortunately that is not a feature. So the way we're going to activate our environment is with Conda activate Phys 1321. We used this command just a little while ago when we were setting things up. It'll switch us over to our environment, and now we can run JupyterLab. So there's going to be space here between those two, JupyterLab, because there are a few other Jupyter commands. All right, so what this is going to do is it is going to set up or launch our web browser, and in this tab, it's going to connect us over to a program called JupyterLab. And JupyterLab has quite a number of features that I'm going to go over in another video, but for right now I just want to make sure it launches. All right, and so that's what you should see once it does launch. For now, let's close that and let me show you another way to launch it. So what I'm going to do is in this window, to make it stop, I'm going to hit Control-C. There we go. I guess you have to hit it twice. And that'll shut it down for us. The issue here, if you leave it running, is it doesn't just go away. So we have to make sure we don't fill up our computers with copies of Jupyter running all over the place. If you're ever wondering about that, like, hey, do I have a bunch of these running? What you can do is type Jupyter notebook list. Those things that Jupyter runs are called notebooks. They're sort of like the basic file for one of these. So we can list which of these exist, and what we should find here is that there's none of them because we shut it down properly. Okay, so the other way we can launch Jupyter is we can go over to our Anaconda Navigator. All right, and here is our Navigator, and the place it dumps us right here is applications on. It by default is going to show us the base, but if we drop down here, we can see our other environment. So let's collect that, or click on that, and it's going to switch us over to that environment. That's what it's doing right now. And what we'll see in a moment is that changes here under Jupyter from install to launch. We've got, well, actually two of these, JupyterLab and Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook's sort of like the older version of Jupyter, has a few less features. I mean, for our purposes, either would actually work, but I'm going to try and steer you towards JupyterLab because it has some nice features that I think will make learning a little bit easier. So we just click launch. And what will happen is in a little bit, our web browser should open up just like before. All right, and here is Jupyter loading up for us. Now, so we're good to go here. A little while ago, I mentioned how you can check to see if Jupyter is running. If we check right now, we should see that one is running because we have it open. Sure enough, there we go. We have this right here. And this is actually kind of handy for us if we wanted to open it up in, say, like a different web browser. Especially if you have like a really old version of Internet Explorer as your default web browser, some of the stuff isn't going to work because it's such an old browser. What we can do is highlight that and copy it. Hit Control-C to copy. And let's try opening up a different web browser. I'm going to open up Edge. You'll be able to paste that in here, hit Enter, and then this will open up Jupyter Lab in Edge. Now, it doesn't make a second version or a second copy of the Jupyter program. It's just showing me a different view of the same thing. And any changes I make here, if I went back over to Chrome and refresh the page, I'd see the changes there as well, because it's just a different interface to the same program. So that's just a trick you can use if you need to get it, need to open up Jupyter quickly in a different web browser if you want to see if it's running. Now, there's another way we can shut down. I'll show this maybe also in the Jupyter video, but we don't always have to go to the terminal and hit Control-C. We can go here to File, Shut Down, and that will close the program. So it says, the server is stopped. If we go back over here and try to list, it's going to show us that nothing is running. Now, I did leave it open in Chrome. So what we're going to see here, if I killed it from Chrome, it's still open in Edge, and here it's saying, hey, I'm dead. So nothing here will work till you restart Jupyter, either from Anaconda Navigator or from your command line. Okay, so that's all for this time, and I will see you in another video or perhaps live in a few weeks.